Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In the previous video we used VBA to automatically delete empty rows, and I'll put a link in the description just in case you haven't watched it. This video will be similar, although we're not going to be deleting any data. Instead, what we're going to do is to flag rows with incomplete data. I think this is a common real-world example, and in many of the data sets I have worked with, often the data is incomplete, and sometimes this is even critical if in case you need to load that data into a different system. So once again, this is the IMDb top 1000 dataset that I downloaded from Kaggle, and I have copied the data into a new sheet, and I have deliberately cleared the content of some cells. And what we're going to do now is we're going to mark rows, but not the entire rows, only the range that we have data. And if we have two or more cells that are missing, let's say 2 or 3, we're going to color the row in yellow. And if there are more than 3 cells that are missing, like for instance here, we're going to mark it in red. If less than 2 cells are missing, we're not going to mark the row. And I guess to some extent we may be able to do this with the conditional formatting here. But first of all, I'm not too sure about that. And second, trust me, VBA will give us a lot more flexibility. So I'm gonna click Ctrl Z 2 times. And let's go to the Visual Basic Editor, where I'm going to insert a module. And I'm gonna start writing a subroutine, which I will call color incomplete rows. And maybe not the best name for a procedure, but anyway. Anytime I'm working with a workbook that has multiple sheets, I always like to declare the sheets as variables to avoid any mistake. So since I'm going to be working on the data sheet, then I'm going to declare this as variable of type worksheet. And since it's a worksheet, that means it's object, I need to set it to this workbook.worksheets, the name of the sheet in parentheses, actually not in parentheses, in double quotes. The next thing I'd like to do is to identify how many rows I have in my dataset. Obviously, since I know that there are 1000 rows, I can hard code it in the code, but if tomorrow someone sends me a dataset with, let's say, 10,000 rows, it's not gonna work. So what I'm gonna do instead is I'm gonna declare a variable last row, which will be of type long. And to identify the last row, we can write data.ws.cells rows.count in column A. From then we're moving upwards and we're gonna get the row. And if I simply check this, it's gonna show in the immediate window that it's 1001. This is the good thing about it, that if I add new data here, if I click run now it's gonna be 1024. So that's the idea, to make the procedure a little bit dynamic. And I'm gonna do exactly the same thing with the last column. Although we have only 16,384 columns, I believe, so I can use integer here, or even if I use, long, it's not gonna be a problem. And for the last call, this will be on the first row, and we're gonna use columns.count, and this time we're going to go to the left direction, so Excel to left, and this time we're gonna get the column. And if I check if this is correct, it should be debug.print last call. It says that it's 8, and I believe letter H is exactly the 8th letter of each alphabet. Go back to the Visual Basic Editor. And I also need one variable, which I will call I as long, because this will be the counter. And now we're gonna loop. So from the second to the last row. And now in each row, we need to identify the range from the first to the last call. And we're gonna do this dynamically again. So I'll need yet another variable, which I will call maybe current range as range. And here I will set it. A range is an object, so we need to use set to assign a value to it. So the current range will be the range in that same sheet, and the first cell in that range will be on row I and column A, which is 1. The last cell on that range will be again on row I, and the column will be the last call variable. And just to show you that this works, we can select the range just to see how it looks like. And I'm gonna start debugging now, so I'll be clicking F8. And now we can see that correctly it took on the second row from column A to column H. If I keep on clicking F8, we can see that it works properly. So I'm going to remove this. And now we need to count how many empty cells there are on each row. And for this, we'll need another variable, which I will call cell as range. And we'll also need a variable which will hold how many empty cells we have. So maybe I will call it empty cells as integer. And here we will have a nested loop. So this time I'm gonna use for each loop. So for each cell in the current range, next cell. And before the loop, we need to reset this variable. So it always starts with 0. And inside the nested loop, we can write an if statement to check if cell.value is an empty string. Now we need to increase this variable. Now, unfortunately, in VBA, this syntactic sugar that we have in programming languages like Python and JavaScript, this is not available here. So you see Visual Basic Editor immediately tags it as incorrect syntax because it doesn't know what that means. That means that we'll have to do it, we'll have to write it in the old-fashioned way, like that. And maybe I can write here debug.print empty cells. And I'm gonna write stop. And let's see, I'll click run. It says 0 because on the first row we don't have any empty cells. If I click run one more time, it's again 0 because we don't have anything here. But now on the third row, which is actually on the fourth row in the third iteration, it should return 1, 2 here. So let's see. Yeah, exactly. So now outside the second loop, we can write an if statement. And by the way, in a real world project, what I'm going to write now, I will probably isolate in another function, but this is simply for demonstration purposes. So what I'm going to write here is that if empty cells is greater than or equal to 2 and empty cells is less than 4, then and if, then we can mark the entire row. So this is going to be the case for the yellow. So I'm gonna write a comment here, mark in yellow. So we can write current range dot interior dot color equals, I think we can use RGB yellow directly. And else if empty cells, if it's more than or equal to 4, then this will be the use case where we have a lot of missing data, so it's going to be marked in red. And it's probably gonna look awful, but this is just for demonstration purposes. So again, current range interior dot color equals RGB red. All right, so this is the entire macro. It's exactly one page. Again, in a real world project, at least this part should be isolated in another function. But let's see now if it's going to work. I'm gonna click run. And we can see that we have a lot of rows that are colored. So here we're having 3 missing, 3 cells with missing data, and it's colored in yellow. And here we're having 4, so it's colored in red. All right, so thanks for watching. And if you have any questions or comments, please post them below and I'll ensure to reply back as soon as I can. And I'll see you in the next one.